When you tell someone your dream and they respond with a polite nod, that's when you know they don't get it. Not because they're against you, but because they're grounded in what they believe is reality. They operate on the known, the proven, the logical. They calculate odds and base their decisions on statistics. And that's fine for ordinary lives. That's fine for building safe, structured routines. But it's not fine for people like you, the ones with fire in their veins, the ones who feel the pull of something greater, something they can't explain but can't ignore either. Realists will tell you to be practical. They'll warn you about risk, about what happens if it doesn't work out. They'll quote the failure rate, they'll remind you of responsibilities, and they'll urge you to have a backup plan. Because to them, safety is success. Predictability is comfort, but comfort is a cage when your soul was built to soar. Here's the truth most people won't say out loud. Playing it safe is the fastest way to die with your potential still trapped inside you. Because safety isn't neutral. It's costly, it costs dreams, it costs originality, it costs the kind of life where you look back with pride, not regret. Playing it safe is applauded by the masses, but it's the dreamers, the wild, irrational, delusional dreamers who shape the world. Think about it. Every innovation, every revolutionary idea, every leap in human progress came from someone who didn't care what the odds were, someone who dared to ask what if, while everyone else was saying that's not possible. Dreamers don't play by the rules of probability. They don't shrink their vision to fit the current reality. They stretch reality to match their vision. When you're a dreamer, your ideas will scare people. They'll think you've lost touch. They'll call you unrealistic, delusional, even reckless. Because to them, staying in the lines feels like discipline, but to you, it feels like suffocation. And if you've ever felt that like you were meant for more, like your thoughts are too big for the world around you, then you're not wrong. You're just not a realist, and thank God for that. Because the realist will say, I can't do that. It's never been done. The dreamer says, it's never been done. So I must be the one to do it. Realists wait for the perfect time. Dreamers create the time. Realists need proof. Dreamers act on belief, and belief in something no one else sees, is the most powerful force in the universe. It will pull you through failure. It will drive you through criticism. It will keep you standing when you have every reason to sit down. There's something wild in you, something stubborn, something that refuses to conform. And that's not a flaw, it's fuel. It's what separates those who repeat life from those who reinvent it. When you ignore that spark and choose realism over vision, you dim the very thing that was meant to guide you. And let's be honest, realism is often just fear in disguise. Fear dressed up in logic. It's the voice that says, that's too risky, when it really means, I'm scared. It's the inner critic that cloaks doubt in reasonable language, and people will praise you for being cautious. They'll say you're wise, but wisdom without courage is just hesitation. The world has enough people who settle, enough people who aim for average and hit it dead on. What it needs are more of the unshakable ones, the ones who say, I know this sounds crazy, but I believe in it. The ones who are willing to lose sleep, lose friends, lose comfort, just to chase something that feels real to them, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else. That's how every movement begins. That's how every mountain is moved. Not with realism, but with conviction. Not by those who calculate, but by those who commit. Dreamers understand that everything real was once imagined, that everything solid was once an idea floating in the mind of someone who refused to play small. You are not here to blend in. You are not here to repeat what's already been done. You are here to build the impossible, to walk paths no one's paved, to challenge the very limits of what's considered achievable. That requires you to think differently, to live differently, to believe differently. Realists will call you naive, they'll mock your faith, they'll question your sanity, but deep down, a part of them will envy your courage. Because they'll see in you what they once had, before they silenced it. You have a choice. Play it safe or play for legacy. Stay grounded or lift off. Be logical or be limitless. And when the voice of doubt creeps in, whisper back with fire, I wasn't born to be realistic. I was born to build what doesn't exist yet. And not everyone will understand what you see, and they're not supposed to. Your vision, your dream, your calling isn't a public broadcast, it's a private signal. It doesn't light up the sky for everyone to see. It burns quietly in your soul, calling you and no one else. That's why you've got to protect it. That's why you've got to fight for it. Because in the beginning, it's fragile. It's not always loud or well defined. It's just a whisper in your chest that says, there's more for me than this. You'll share your dream with people, thinking they'll be just as excited. But what do they give you? Doubts, questions, that confused smile that says they think you're chasing shadows. They ask, why would you want to do that? Or what makes you think you can pull it off? And sometimes they don't say anything at all. They just go quiet, and you feel the silence louder than words. That's when the insecurity kicks in. That's when you start wondering if they're right, if maybe you are being unrealistic. But here's the thing, they're not wrong for them. They're operating from their view of life, from their experiences, from their limitations. But they're not living your life. They haven't seen what you've seen. They haven't felt what you've felt. They don't lie awake at night with a vision dancing behind their eyelids. You do. That means it's yours. And just because it doesn't make sense to them doesn't mean it's not real. Just because they can't see it doesn't mean it's not meant to exist. You've got to stop asking for validation from people who have never built anything. If they're living on autopilot, how could they understand your manual drive? If they've spent their lives coloring inside the lines, how could they respect your blank canvas? Don't expect them to applaud what they've never dared to pursue. And don't let their inability to dream become the cage that traps your own. The vision you carry, it's personal. It comes from your wounds, your gifts, your journey. Maybe it was born from pain. Maybe it came to you during your lowest moment. That moment when everything fell apart and somehow in the rubble you saw a future. That wasn't a coincidence. That was clarity. And it doesn't require consensus. You see, most people are trained to wait. Wait for signs. Wait for support. Wait for the stars to align. But visionaries don't wait. They move. They build before anyone believes. They start writing the book before they have readers. They start training before anyone's watching. Because the truth is, your dream doesn't need a witness to be worthy. It just needs you to show up. And here's something powerful. The longer you walk with your vision, the stronger it becomes. Every step, every sacrifice, every time you say no to comfort and yes to growth, it grows. It sharpens, it expands, but that only happens if you learn to walk alone. That only happens if you accept, early on, that not everyone can come with you. Some people are not meant to understand. They're meant to observe from the outside, and maybe, one day, they'll say, I didn't get it back then, but now I see. Until then, you keep moving. Because when you try to explain your vision to people who aren't ready for it, you end up shrinking it to make it digestible. You water it down so it sounds reasonable. You sand down the edges to make it comfortable. And suddenly, your once burning fire becomes a lukewarm idea that fits neatly inside their box of reality. But dreams were never meant to be boxed. You were not born to translate your passion into a language others approve of. You were born to speak boldly, even if your voice shakes, to carry that inner light, even when the room is dark. That means staying committed when the crowd walks away. That means choosing progress over popularity. That means having the courage to say, I see something no one else sees, and I'm going to build it anyway. And yes, there will be moments of loneliness. There will be days when you question yourself, when you wonder if maybe it would be easier to just let it go, but you won't, because deep down you know this vision wasn't placed in you by accident. You were chosen to carry it. You were chosen to birth it, and no one else will ever feel the urgency of it like you do. People will call you arrogant. They'll say you're chasing fantasies. They'll try to project their fear onto your fire. Let them, because their fear is their problem, not your prophecy. You don't need their approval. You don't need their applause. You need discipline, focus, and a backbone strong enough to say, I'm doing this with or without you. You've got to be willing to walk the road alone, because what waits at the end wasn't meant for the crowd. It was meant for the one bold enough to follow the vision no matter what. Every groundbreaking idea the world has ever seen, every invention, every movement, every masterpiece, was born out of delusion, not the kind of delusion that disconnects you from reality, but the kind that dares to bend reality around a bold, unshakable belief. That kind of delusion doesn't ignore what is. It simply refuses to accept that what is has to stay that way. It's the voice inside a person that says, this may not exist now, but I believe in it enough to make it real. Look around you. Look at the technology we use, the cities we live in, the freedoms we often take for granted. None of those things existed until someone, somewhere, was delusional enough to think they could create something the world had never seen. When the Wright brothers looked up at the sky and imagined humans flying, they were ridiculed. People thought it was a joke, thought it was madness, but that so-called madness gave us aviation. When people first heard of electricity powering cities, it sounded like science fiction. Now we flip a switch without thinking twice. What was once called delusion is now called reality. You know what that means. It means delusion is just the future that hasn't happened yet. It's the seed of innovation, the fuel for breakthroughs. It's what separates the ones who follow instructions from the ones who rewrite the manual. Delusion is the birthplace of innovation and greatness because it gives you permission to see the invisible and act on it as if it's already tangible. When you are delusional in your belief, it makes you unstoppable. You don't just hope, it feels like certainty. Even when nothing around you reflects your dream, you act like it's inevitable. That mindset is dangerous to mediocrity. It shakes up environments. It threatens the status quo. Because when someone walks into a room believing the impossible is possible, it forces everyone else to question their limits. That's why being delusional isn't just a mindset. It's a rebellion. A refusal to settle. A refusal to accept that because something hasn't been done, it can't be done. You can't build the extraordinary by thinking like the ordinary. You can't break through if you're waiting for confirmation from a world that's never seen what you're about to create. Most people want guarantees. Most people want the blueprint. Delusional people build without it. They leap, they risk, and they believe even while they're bleeding, and yes, you will bleed. Because when you choose to live in delusion, in vision, in faith, in relentless belief, you're going to get hit. People will try to pull you back to what's comfortable, what's familiar, what's accepted. But you weren't born to blend in. You weren't made to repeat history. You were made to make it, and that requires a level of conviction most people can't handle. The journey to greatness is brutal. It's lonely. It's filled with moments where the only thing you've got left is belief. And that belief feels crazy because there's no evidence yet. That's the test. That's where delusion becomes your greatest weapon. When logic says give up and fear says sit down, delusion stands up and says keep going. That's how people push through barriers. That's how innovators survive decades of failure before one idea changes the world. People love to celebrate success once it arrives, but they forget the years of doubt, rejection, and silence that came before it. They see the glory, but they didn't see the delusion that kept it alive in the dark. The lonely nights, the voices of doubt, both external and internal, the questions that never stopped, they don't see that it took an unshakable, unreasonable, unrelenting belief in something that didn't exist yet. Delusional people don't wait to be chosen. They choose themselves. They don't wait for conditions to be perfect. They start in chaos. They act when it's uncomfortable, and over time, the world catches up to what they already knew. That's how greatness is built, not with permission, but with persistence, not with proof, but with fire. You see, to everyone else, it looks like you're out of your mind, but to you, you're the only one seeing clearly. You're not ignoring the facts. You're just not chained by them. You see a bigger picture, a different outcome, and you believe in that outcome so much that you're willing to bet everything on it. That kind of courage is rare. But that kind of courage changes everything. You're not here to be safe. You're not here to play by rules someone else made for a life they settled for. You're here to stretch the boundaries of what's possible. To do what hasn't been done, to build what hasn't been seen, that doesn't come from playing small. That doesn't come from realism. That comes from delusion, from choosing to walk by faith when sight has nothing to offer you. And that right there is where greatness begins. If you are serious about doing something extraordinary, something that disrupts, transforms, or elevates life beyond the ordinary, you're going to have to be okay with looking foolish. Not once, not twice, but again and again. The truth is, you cannot chase something legendary while trying to protect your ego. The ego wants to look polished. The ego wants approval. The ego wants applause. But greatness doesn't come to those who want to look good. It comes to those who are willing to be misunderstood, misjudged, and laughed at in the short term for what they believe in long term. This is the cost of big dreams. And it's not talked about enough. Everyone sees the success story, the fame, the money, the status, the moment where it all comes together. But few talk about the night someone had to show up with trembling hands and a cracked voice, knowing they weren't ready, but doing it anyway. No one sees the years of people rolling their eyes, snickering behind closed doors, or labeling someone as delusional, simply because they dared to believe in something different. You have to be willing to embarrass yourself. You have to be willing to be wrong in public, to fail where everyone can see you, to chase something that hasn't been done before and risk the humiliation of it not working. Because every person who's ever changed the world started with a vision that made them look foolish. Vision is invisible in the beginning. The only person who can see it is the one holding it. That's why the early stages of greatness are often the most brutal. That's when the silence is loudest and the critics are closest. That's when your mind plays tricks on you and your heart starts asking if this was all a mistake. It's in those moments that people give up, not because they lack talent or discipline, but because they're not willing to look stupid. They're not willing to be seen starting small. They're not willing to be seen trying something new and failing. But that's exactly what it takes. It takes being vulnerable. It takes stepping into rooms where people don't get it yet, and you still choose to speak. It takes creating before you have an audience, showing up before you're invited, giving your all before anyone even asks for it. And here's the truth that separates the bold from the average. The bigger the win, the bigger the risk of looking ridiculous. Want to start a business with zero funding? People will say you're insane. Want to pursue a dream that has no clear path? They'll tell you to be realistic. Want to leave a job everyone else envies so you can follow a purpose no one else understands? Prepare for the judgment. People will always have something to say when your courage confronts their comfort. Your boldness reminds them of the chances they never took, But here's the twist. You looking foolish is temporary. The laughter fades, the opinions shift, and one day, those same people who questioned you will come back with a different tone. They'll call you inspiring. They'll say they knew you had it in you. They'll act like they understood all along. That's how it goes, because the world only respects the vision after it works. But the ones who win are the ones who respect the vision before it's visible. You must understand that progress is messy. Mastery is ugly before it's beautiful. No champion began as a champion. No icon walked on stage the first time and blew everyone away. They had to fail. They had to get booed. They had to choke. They had to show up with shaky legs, sweaty hands, and uncertain steps. But they kept going because they knew that looking foolish was part of the process. They knew that rejection was a sign they were moving. They knew that being mocked was confirmation they were no longer playing it safe. And you have to develop that same fire. You have to harden your spirit. You have to walk into every room like you belong there, even if nobody else agrees. You have to try, even when trying means stumbling. You have to speak up, even when your voice is cracking. Because the people who win in life are not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who fall and get back up so many times, falling stops being a fear. Think about this. How many dreams die because someone wanted to avoid a moment of looking stupid? How many gifts go undeveloped because the first attempt was awkward? How many people go to the grave with their potential untouched because they cared more about how they looked than who they could become? Every big success story is paved with moments of embarrassment. With cringeworthy attempts, with moments where people pointed and laughed, but none of that mattered because they were willing to endure the mockery for the sake of the mission. If you want to win big, you have to be able to carry the weight of being doubted. You have to build thick skin, not so you can ignore people, but so you can survive the noise. You have to trade being admired now for being respected later. You have to give yourself permission to be a beginner, to be clumsy, to be raw and unpolished while your greatness is still under construction. There is nothing more powerful than a mind that's made up. A mind that refuses to be shaped by fear, doubt, or failure. Your mindset isn't just a part of your success. It is the foundation, the engine, the armor, and the weapon. When your mindset is locked in, the external world loses its grip on you. The noise fades, the distractions lose their appeal, the opposition might still be there, but it no longer dictates your direction. That's what separates winners from the rest. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not even resources. It's mindset. When you walk through life without mastering your mind, you become a victim of circumstance. Every little setback feels like a reason to stop. Every opinion feels like a weight. Every failure feels like a sign that maybe you weren't meant for it. That's what happens when your mindset isn't trained. You respond to life based on emotion instead of vision. You react to challenges instead of rising through them. But when you shift your mindset, when you take control of your inner dialogue, when you take authority over the way you interpret struggle, everything changes. You stop seeing failure as the end. You start seeing it as feedback. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You start realizing that nothing changes until you do, because mindset isn't about pretending everything's easy. It's about deciding that no matter how hard it gets, you're harder. No matter how loud the doubt becomes, your belief is louder. No matter how uncertain the future looks, you will move anyway. That's the kind of mental toughness it takes to do something that's never been done. That's the kind of mental fire it takes to keep pushing when the results haven't shown up yet. Most people lose in the mind before they ever take action in the world. They talk themselves out of it. They imagine the worst case scenario before they even take the first step. They prepare for failure more than they prepare for success. That kind of thinking is poison. You can have all the strategy, all the plans, all the support in the world, but if your mindset is weak, none of it matters. You will find a way to sabotage your own progress because deep down you don't believe you're built for more, and that belief, that inner belief, it becomes the lens through which you see everything. If your mindset is built on scarcity, you will miss opportunity even when it's standing right in front of you. If your mindset is built on fear, you will interpret growth as danger. But if your mindset is built on strength, you will see storms as tests you're ready to pass. You will look at obstacles and see doors waiting to be kicked open. You will look at rejection and think, good, now I'm getting closer. That kind of thinking makes you untouchable. It doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you get unbreakable. Your mindset must be built intentionally. You can't leave it to chance. You have to program it every day. You have to speak victory before you see results. You have to visualize success when all you've tasted is defeat. You have to declare what's coming, not just describe what is. Too many people spend their lives narrating the present instead of creating the future. Your words matter, your thoughts matter, your focus matters. Because whatever you repeat becomes your reality. Every morning you wake up, you're in a battle, not against the world, but against the thoughts that tell you to stay the same, against the doubts that whisper, who do you think you are, against the comfort that says, you've done enough. That's why mindset is a weapon. It's how you fight back. It's how you stay grounded when things get chaotic. It's how you maintain vision when the world shows you limitation. This isn't about being positive all the time. It's about being resilient. It's about building a mindset that expects hardship and still chooses progress. A mindset that gets disappointed and still chooses discipline. A mindset that understands setbacks are part of the path and doesn't use them as permission to quit. You've got to train your mind like a warrior because your mind will try to protect you from discomfort, but growth lives in discomfort. Your mind will try to keep you safe, but your calling requires risk. You cannot afford to think small. You cannot afford to water down your ideas to make them more palatable for people who don't dream like you do. You've got to expand. You've got to take up space in your own mind. The battlefield is internal long before it becomes external. If you can win up here, everything else becomes execution. Mindset is what keeps you steady when the ground shakes. It's what keeps you believing when the scoreboard shows 0. It's what fuels your fire when no one's cheering and no one's watching. There will always be reasons to doubt, always be reasons to delay, always be voices telling you to turn back. But your mindset is what lets you move anyway. It's what lets you silence the noise and focus on the mission. It's what allows you to walk like it's already yours, even when no evidence exists yet. You don't have to feel ready. You just have to decide you are. Because once your mind locks in, everything else follows. When you believe without compromise, speak without fear, and move without hesitation, you become unstoppable. Greatness doesn't come dressed in logic. It doesn't show up after you've played it safe, followed the rules, and asked for permission. It shows up when you stop waiting for evidence and start acting on conviction. When you silence the doubters, starting with the one in your own mind, and go anyway. When you stop shrinking your vision to make others comfortable and start expanding your reality to match the fire that's been burning in your chest since the moment you knew you were meant for more. Be delusional. Be the one who sees it before it exists. Be the one who starts before it makes sense. Be the one who's willing to look foolish, fail forward, and keep walking with your head high when the world tells you to sit down. Because this is your life, your vision, your moment, and if you don't believe in it, who will? You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need everyone to approve. You just need to believe loud enough, long enough, and strong enough that eventually the world stops asking how and starts saying, how did they do it?